Hi, my name is Alonso Reina Rivarola, and I am the director of the Dream Center here at the University of Utah. Today, I'm here to talk to you about my paper that I wrote a couple months ago now, but it's called Undocumented Ways of Navigating Complex Sociopolitical Realities, a Critical Race Counterstory. Now, in this paper, I look at the ways in which national policy and state policy truly interact with each other to affect the ways in which undocumented students are able to access, navigate, and truly experience higher ed in the US. I think as, higher education professionals, student affairs professionals, we really need to know our national policies and state policies to be able to truly serve our undocumented students, all of our students, but particularly undocumented students and their access to higher ed and how they navigate higher ed and how they experience higher ed truly rely on our understanding of national and state policies. Um, in this paper, I start with giving, of course, some background and context to the, experiences of undocumented folks, some demographics, including the fact that there is 11 million undocumented folks living in the U.S., myself included. I have deferred action currently, but we all know what happened to that. It was rescinded. So in this paper, I look at the number of dreamers, people who would have qualified for the Dream Act in '01, which did not pass. However, Congress is currently in the process of debating the Dream Act. Hopefully, by 2018, we are able to pass the Dream Act. Crossing our fingers right there. Um, and we also, look at the population of dreamers who are currently enrolled in college. We believe that it's anywhere from 200,000 to 225,000 undocumented students that are in college currently. Now, in the paper, I talk about, of course, national policy and state policy. I will not go into depth in this video just because it's a lot, and also I encourage you to read the piece. But when we look at national policy, of course, that's something that affects all of the states. But it's very important for us to look at state-specific policies because each state will have policies that specifically impact undocumented students, which are non-transferable, right? So if a student were to, let's say, be raised in Utah and qualify for in-state tuition in Utah, if they went to California, they would not qualify for their equivalent policy because they did not meet those requirements, right? So in Utah, to qualify for in-state tuition as an undocumented student, you must have had to attend a Utah high school for 3 or more years, graduate from a Utah high school, and enroll at a public USHI at a Utah system of higher ed school. However, in California, for AB 540, it's pretty similar requirements, but for California, right? A California high school, a California graduation, and a California enrollment. So essentially, when we talk about undocumented students, we really need to consider multiple factors, including national policy, right, state policy, and then even go as far as institutional policy, because we know that we have private schools that have, a very unique set of policies, and then we look at public schools, which must respond to state policy. So they're unable to, grant in-state tuition unless it's permitted by the state and whatnot. So we really need to consider those. And in addition to that, I think an extra layer, and there is a graphic to go along with this, which I'll add in a little PowerPoint slide. We need to look at, again, national policy, state policy, institutional policy, and then we have to look at the student themselves. We need to look at their identities and also their experiences, right? Because a student, for instance, and I will not, again, go into depth, but a student in theory may qualify for DACA in one state or in the nation, but may not qualify for in-state tuition, right? But may qualify for, let's say, private scholarships administered through a university because they graduated from a high school in that state, right? So it depends, again, it depends on the national context, state context, institutional context, and the individual context of the student. So when working with undocumented students, we really need to examine all of those. In this paper, I also look at the literature. And we know that back when, scholars started like researching undocumented students, they truly focused on the socio-emotional, on the socio-political, and the economic factors that really prevented students or that really shaped the pathways to higher ed for undocumented students, I should say. However, most recent scholarship, and I think this is really important, is shifting from that student centered, that student focused, factors, or that would determine whether a student was able to study or not, to rather looking at the schools and placing some of the responsibility on the colleges and the universities themselves to see if they're prepared or not prepared to work with undocumented students, right? And that's where also the emerging literature on the importance of dream centers, or centers that work specifically with undocumented students in college campuses, is emerging from. And I think that's also really important, right? Case in point, the University of Utah most recently opened a dream center, which we're in right now. Actually, welcome to the dream center. And I think that's really important because we are the first dream center in the state, and also the University of Utah, to open its doors to a center that welcomes undocumented students and works specifically with undocumented students. Of course, we serve all students, right? But our charter is to work with undocumented students specifically, and I think it's really important because, again, it creates a safe space for our students to be able to come and process some of the emotions that come attached to being an undocumented student on campus, right? And I think that's really really important, and I think that's something that I hope that you all get out of this paper. What else? In the paper, I also look at the ways in which, again, institutional agents such as student affairs professionals and higher ed professionals, um, what they can do in order to be most supportive of undocumented students, right? How to build rapport with the student rather than calling them out. How to wait to build that relationship, instead of blatantly asking them about their status without building that trust first, right? We really look at the ways in which building genuine relationships with between the student and the staff member, that institutional agent, is extremely meaningful for all students, and in this case specifically for undocumented students. So I encourage you all to read my piece. Please, I'm open to feedback, commentary, any questions, please email in my way. My info will be below. Thank you and have a wonderful day.